Now we move on to our next news. The Trump administration has accused Harvard University of being in violent violation of the Civil Rights Act, escalating its confrontation with the school even as earlier talks appeared to be moving towards a deal. Yesterday, the Joint Task Force to Combat Anti-Semitism sent a letter to Harvard President Alan Garber, declaring that Harvard has violated Title IV of the Civil Rights Act, a law that bans discrimination in federally funded programs. The letter, signed by Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, states that Harvard was sometimes deliberately indifferent and, in other cases, a willful participant in anti-Semitic harassment. It cites incidents of Jewish and Israeli students being assaulted, spit on, and exposed to anti-Semitic imagery and protest encampments. The letter warns that Harvard could lose all federal funding if it fails to act immediately. The task force suggests that losing federal support might actually spur a commitment to excellence. In response, Harvard says it strongly disagrees with the findings. University spokesman Jason Newton says Harvard has taken substantive steps to fight anti-Semitism, including policy changes, disciplinary measures, and new training programs. The report comes just days after President Trump praised Harvard's efforts and said a deal could be announced soon, but talks have recently stalled over disagreements. A White House official said Trump isn't interested in empty promises and insists that Harvard hasn't held up its end of the bargain. White House press secretary has commented on this. Let's listen in.
Well, there was quite a direct letter that was sent to Harvard this morning, as you know. The negotiations are taking place behind closed doors, so I won't comment on that. But what I will share with all of you, for those who haven't seen it, is the context of this letter, because I think it's very important. And this comes from the Department of Health and Human Services, which concluded after a thorough investigation that Harvard University is in a violent violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, color, and national origin. And if you read some of the content of the investigation and what they found, the majority of Jewish students reportedly experienced negative bias or discrimination on their campus, while a quarter of Jewish students at Harvard felt physically unsafe.
Now we're joined by Joshua Barnes. He's a correspondent at NewsX. Joshua, what more can you tell us about this evolving news?
Well, yes, Asuma, this Trump administration versus Harvard conversation has been rolling on for some time, sparked over calls about pro-Palestinian protests, the Trump administration calling Harvard anti-Semitic, also questioning their role with China and threatening against a ban on foreign students with Harvard. The conversation about cutting federal funding has been there for many weeks now, but this, the next step in the Trump administration's move to block that with Harvard. Harvard themselves have called this action silly and said that they are using their First Amendment right to their students, that of course being free speech. But this conversation continues to roll on and debates will be had. Court action has been had, but ultimately the Trump administration are continuing this battle, with Harvard not backing down either. One to keep an eye on.
Thank you, Joshua Barnes. Now we move on to our next news. At least 39 people have died following a powerful explosion